Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for joining us and me today. You're going to get a double dose of Delano Squires. A double dose of Delano. That's kind of good and interesting. We're going to start the show with Delano, and we're going to end the show with Delano. We're going to have Delano on two different topics. The Root 100, or the Root, came out with this list of the most influential Black Americans, blah, blah, blah. And I got an interesting take on it about how there's no Black male athletes really on the list. It's kind of fascinating. We'll get into that with Delano and just the whole absurdity of the list with Delano. And then we'll end the show with Delano talking about a column I wrote earlier in the week about why Black women remain so loyal to the Democratic Party, why white women, suburban white women, started to lean back into Donald Trump. We'll talk about both those issues with Delano. We'll sandwich in between that Steve Kim and I talking about the football games for this weekend, our prize picks, give you a little action on fantasy football, a little action on which side to be on as it relates to the spread. We'll do all of that today. Delano, Steve Kim, Delano. We'll toss in a little bit of butter. Number one thing you guys can do is join the Fearless Mission, become a subscriber to Fearless. Go to fearlessmission.com, use the promo code FEARLESS40, and you can save $40 on your yearly subscription. I really, really, really need you all to do that. It's the best thing you can do to support me, this show, our vision, our biblical worldview. It's the best way to fight the algorithms that are against us is by becoming a subscriber. Listen, you got to go the extra mile. If you want this momentum to continue that we have, those of us with a biblical worldview, those of us with conservative values, got to go a little bit the extra mile. Become a subscriber. Save $40, Fearless40, fearlessmission.com. Let's bring in Delano, joining us from Washington, D.C. And Delano, welcome back to the show. We're getting a double dose of Delano today. A lot of Delano on Fearless. Love it. This will be great. The show will be much smarter today than it normally is. But Delano, The Root, which, purports to be a website, news site, blog directed at African Americans, representing the African American point of view. Mm-hmm. Man, it's really turned into a silly website, in my opinion. And maybe it always was. I went and, after seeing this top 100 list of the most influential Black people, I started doing research on man, who started The Root? How did it get here? Who owns it now? It certainly ain't owned by Black people. I don't think it's ever been owned by Black people. And it certainly seems to have a clear agenda at this point. And I found this top 100 list fascinating because it was so matriarchal. It was so, I think of the top 50, 28 of the most influential were women. Maybe that's true. Maybe I'm just silly and stupid. Maybe I'm in denial about how emasculated Black culture has become, and maybe all of our leadership and influencers are predominantly women. But then I just went through the list and I was like, this is stupid. And it's a reflection of 2024. It's not totality. It's not like Barack Obama's not on this list. He should be, because even in 2024, he's very influential. But it's not just like, hey, who's alive and who's had influence over the last 20 years. It's specifically about 2024. And the list starts out with Kamala Harris, the vice president. Not the choice I would make, but it's a justifiable choice. She ran for president. She's the vice president. She's not Black. She's Indian. But, let's don't even bother with the details. Let's don't bother with the details. But then number 2 on the list, I'm like, and if this is true, if number 2, 3, 4 are correct, holy cow, are we in trouble? Holy cow. It is nothing but chaos. Simone Biles, a gymnast, is the second most influential African-American in the United States, or African-American, that's redundant, in 2024. Kendrick Lamar, a rapper, not like us. He's number 3. And Beyonce Knowles Carter, Jay-Z's wife, is number 4. Don Staley, number 5. I don't know who Coleman Domingo is. I guess he's some actor and playwright. Hopefully, Delano, you know, you're smarter than me. Maybe you know better than I do. Alvin Bragg, the district attorney, I think out of New York, he's 7. We get to someone seriously that should be in contention for number 1. She's a Supreme Court justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson. But she's, you know, you're on the Supreme Court and you're pretty influential. And then followed by that, Ketanji Brown Jackson. You know who comes in right after? Alicia Keys. Yes, Alicia, her influence is amazing. Then Hakeem Jeffries, Jeffrey Wright, another actor, Jennifer Hudson. The list goes. At number 14, this blew my mind. Before we get to 1, we don't get to Lamar Jackson. We don't get to Patrick Mahomes. We don't get to LeBron James. We don't get to Steph Curry. Asia Wilson, the center for the Las Vegas Aces, is the 14th most influential. Wow, that's incredible. Deion Sanders isn't on the entire list. 100. LeBron James isn't on the list. Steph Curry's not on the list. Lamar, Patrick Mahomes. They finally get to a black man, and it's a sprinter. Noah Lyles, an Olympic sprinter. I get it. What did he win, the 100-meter dash? What incredible influence. I know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Or 2, yeah.
Delano, what's your, is this like screaming out like, black people, you're in really, really bad shape. Your influencers and leaders are rappers and gymnasts and people that most people aren't influenced by. I don't know, your takeaway.
Yeah, so I saw the list. I'm not surprised. I'm definitely not surprised by the top pick because obviously the Root believes that Kamala Harris is a black American. Okay, we won't debate that for right now. But I have some history here, Jason. I went to the Route 100 as part of the media in 2011. I covered it for Black and Married with Kids. I had a press credential and all that. And they had, I remember talking to Devon Franklin, he's a producer in Hollywood. He used to be Megan Good's ex-husband, and a few other people that I made contact with. So this is something that they've been doing for quite some time now, certainly over a decade. And I'm not surprised by the list at all. And I went into the different categories. They have activism and justice. They have politics. They have sports. And on the sports list, they have Shannon Sharpe is on there. They have media, and Stephen A. Smith is in the media one. Well, when you get, I think, to entertainment, then you see the list explode. And I think what it reflects is that what we consider to be influence in the black community is largely driven by politics, athletics, and entertainment. They actually have a STEM category, which I think is a good thing. I only think there were 3 people in that category, none of whom anybody watching the show would ever have heard of. I know one of them because she started an organization called Black Girls Code. But I think you see a heavy tilt in the direction of entertainment and politics that I actually do think reflects where things stand in the black community today. Coleman Domingo, to go back to your question, he's an actor. He played, what's the guy's name? MLK's confidant who helped, Bayard Rustin. He played Bayard Rustin in the Netflix movie. He's certainly LGBTQIA 2S plus silent P identifying. Yeah. So I'm not surprised that he came in that high. What I would like to know from the Root actually is what algorithm they use to determine influence, because I saw they had like social media reach and they had a few other things, but I just want to know how they determine this. And it would be interesting to know the demographics of the people who put the list together. Because if you ask a bunch of 25-year-old kids who are freshly out of college about influence, I think they will come back with a different list than if you had a more mixed group in terms of age. I don't even expect political ideology, because there's probably nobody on this list who's right of center or who would publicly state that they voted for Donald Trump. But at least in terms of age and life experience, it'd be interesting to know who it is that was responsible for putting this list together.
So let's go back to the, because I'm sorting this through, let's go back to the sports list. Mm-hmm. Simone Biles, number one, or the top sports person. Don Staley, Asia Wilson, then Noah Lyles, then Sha'Carri Richardson, Brittany Griner, Angel Reese. So that's all women of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The first 7, 6 are women. Then comes Shannon Sharp. Then Taylor Rooks. And I'm like, Taylor Rooks? Wow, Taylor, she's a sports reporter. This is amazing. How come she's not in the same category as Stephen A. Smith? She's a sports reporter. Then there's Kia Clark, CEO of the New York Liberty. She's the CEO of the New York Liberty. And then Renee Montgomery. So in the sports lane of the top 100, and there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people listed that made the top 100 from the sports world. 9 of them are women. Has the black man fallen off that hard in sports that the top 11 black athletes or black sports figures are women? Is that a reflection of reality?
I don't. I think it's a reflection of the reality they want to create. And let me draw a comparison to something that you may have thought or may have heard of or may have heard people sort of on your side of social media talk about. I see a number of people, both black and white, start to question, why is it whenever I watch a commercial nowadays and it has a family, the family's always mixed race? I see white people saying that. I see black people saying that. It's either mixed race or it's LGBT. And at a certain point, and my wife and I have talked about it, when you see something that is far out of step with reality, you should assume that somebody is trying to condition your mind to accept something because they think that that is the ideal. And that's how I would respond to this list. Some of these people I've never even heard of, like legitimately have never heard of. Now, if the root wants to say when we talk about influence, we want to honor people who had major accomplishments. We want to honor people who, made news and made stories. We want to honor people who did, something of importance in a particular calendar year. Okay, I mean, that's fine. But influence, you typically think of someone who's moving the needle in some particular direction, right? So an influential person should be able to say, all right, guys, we're going in this direction, and some number of people are going to follow them. I don't think that that's what is going on, at least on the sports side of this particular list. And I think what they're trying to do is to say, look, women's sports had a banner year this year, even though none of us can publicly define women or want to publicly define women. But anyway, the WNBA had a big year because of Angel Reese and maybe Caitlin Clark. And we want to honor the women who are sort of setting the table in that league as we see that league. We hope that league, continues to climb, to the top of the mountain as it relates to professional sports leagues. I'm assuming that's what they're going for. But it is strange to see a list that doesn't have any NBA players or any NFL players, when you're talking about influence. But I think this is a reflection of where the root and the people who write for the root and the root. And again, I've written for the root. My first, after Black and Married with Kids, I think the first place I wrote publicly was for the root. And this is probably 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. And the root has moved far to the left in that time and has become far more, LGBT plus affirming and feminist affirming. So I'm not surprised that this is the content that they're putting out right now.
If we learned anything from this election cycle, it's how important it is for all of us to fight, fight, fight. We also learned how desperately the left wants to fight to take babies' lives, which is why every day Preborn Ministries fights for those babies. Preborn's network of clinics is positioned in the highest abortion areas, and they're fighting for mothers who are deciding between life and death for their unborn child. By introducing a mother to her child on a free ultrasound, they double the chances that the mother will choose life. Then they, Preborn, shows those babies and the mother God's love, providing additional assistance for up to 2 years. When those on the left shout abortion, we must shout life. Will you help Preborn in its quest to save the lives of babies? If you have the means, would you consider a leadership gift to save babies in a big way? Your tax-deductible donation of $5,000 will sponsor Preborn's entire network for 24 hours, helping to rescue and save 200 babies. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, keyword baby, or give the way I prefer to give. Preborn.com/fearless. Preborn.com/fearless. The only person on this list that I completely agree with is Dawn Staley. I think she's really influential in women's sports. I think she has a lot of power and a lot of leverage, and I think she uses it. Don't agree with the way she uses it, but there's no denying her influence and power. I think she participated in keeping Caitlin Clark off the Olympic team. I think she has made everyone, the whole movement of we must center and elevate Asia Wilson, her former South Carolina player. I think that's all her pulling strings behind the scenes. And so her influence and power is immense. No one questions her. But it's how is Deion Sanders not on this list? How? He's been the biggest story in college football. His approach in college football has polarized and disrupted the entire system. Everybody talks about it. Because I would think I wouldn't put him on the same level as Dawn Staley because Deion's on the climb, but he would be right after Dawn Staley in my mind in terms of sports people with influence that have clearly influenced sports in a major way. And this, to me, that list as it relates to sports speaks to this patriarchal, matriarchal, male-female conflict that is going on, and organizations like The Root are saying women have won. Even in the sports world, men take a back seat to us. May not be true, but that is the messaging they're sending out. And literally, like if I'm a white person who's not that connected, doesn't follow, I read this list and I would sit there and go, man, do I feel bad for those guys? Really, this is leadership. This is Angel Reese, who runs around with her booty hanging out half the time. She's one of the most influential, and maybe she is, but that's a sad statement and testament. Final thought on the sports angle of this, and then I want to move to the media if you have an additional thought.
So it's the sports angle, again, is interesting because I don't know if they have an age cutoff, but I'm like, Deion's definitely older than Dawn Staley, but it is strange that he would not be on there because, to your point, he's not just changed the conversation about college football now at Colorado. He was starting to change it even at Jackson State, and whether really good black players should start going to HBCUs and helping to build them back up. And Deion got his job. Eddie George, Ed Reed's position at Bethune-Cookman was short-lived, but he was really starting to change some conversation. So it is strange that he's not there. But just given my interactions with the Root recently, I went to the Root 100. No, the Root, they had an all-day sort of symposium at Howard University last year. And, I mean, you could tell this is the Root represents the sort of upwardly mobile, college-educated, very much, feminist influence culture that black culture that you would sort of come across if you've ever matriculated at a university within the last 20 plus years, right? This is what it represents. So I'm not surprised that there aren't more male athletes on there, because I think this is the Root trying to shape reality into what it is that they want it to be.
They're speaking it into existence, and it seems to be working to some degree. Because my final not final thought on this discussion, but what percentage of people might read this list, Black Americans that might read this list, and may not bat an eye, may not think anything strange is going on with this list? Would they even be sitting, hey, where's LeBron? Hey, where's Lamar Jackson? Or do they just read it and say, and move on and never give it another thought?
I think probably more the latter, right? Because, I mean, the root has some influence in this sort of niche space. So, like, there's the root, and I always mention the root and the griot together because they're similar, websites started around the same time. I believe the root spun out of the Washington Post, the griot out of MSN or MSNBC. So, I don't think this is going to be like a national story. I think abundance of women on the list is going to play for a lot of people, and they would be happy to see that. It's interesting, as you were talking about influential, I don't think in the media or entertainment section I saw Sexy Red. And of course, I'm as big a Sexy Red hater as anybody, but I certainly think she'd be more influential than some of the artists that are on there. So then it goes back to how is the root defining influence and how are they measuring it? Now, it might be the case that she was on there last year, right? But I don't think that the Black folk who read the root are not going to lodge complaints against this list. The ones who hate the root, and there are many, and I know many of them, and think that the root is a sort of a corrupt, sort of far left mouthpiece for the Democrats, probably would raise some questions. But again, this is the same platform that just a few days ago put out a piece asking the question, is slavery going to come back under a second Donald Trump term? And they answered it by starting the piece saying, this is an issue that's been on the mind of many Black Americans. So, you know what you're gonna get with this particular website. So,
moving to the media, the top Black influencer in the media space, according to The Root, is a guy named Keith Lee, someone I've never heard of. I know Keith Lee, the former Memphis State basketball star, probably too old for you to remember him, but that's the only Keith Lee that I really know. This is a former MMA fighter, influencer, and food critic. And I'm like, oh boy, we got no media influence if it's a food critic is at the top of our food chain. And then they come in with the alphabet pick of Don Lemon. Then you'll never hear me utter a disparaging word about Tamron Hall. I love you, Tamron Hall. I don't agree with you being listed number 3 here, but I do love Tamron Hall, and I know you're married, so I'm gonna stop there. Robin Roberts is number 4. That makes a little sense. I don't know who Vladimir Duthiers is. Does he work for Zelensky or does he work for Putin? I don't know, but I get he's a reporter for CBS Morning. I've never heard of him. Yeah, Yamamichi Alcindor. I used to know who she was because she was a troll of Donald Trump, but I guess she'll be back to trolling Donald Trump. I don't know what she did in 2024. Simone Sanders, Baby Joy Reid is what I call her. She's on MSNBC, and she's actually ranked ahead of Joy Reid. But Bakari Sellers, he's like an internet guy, right? I mean,
he's on CNN.
I guess he comes on CNN.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Laura Coates, haven't seen her. Looks interesting, though. I may have to look her up, quite honestly.
You evaluate this list on all wrong terms, Jason.
It's interesting. I just got an amazing picture, but I've never heard of her. Joy Reid, heard of him. Mm-hmm. Oh, she does? Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Craig Melvin, know who he is. Then Stephen A. Smith, who probably gets paid the most of anybody on this list. He chimes in. I don't know who Duchesne Drew is, if I've said that name right. I don't know who that is. Cameo George, executive producer, I don't know who that is. Harriet Cole, never heard of her. Lindsay Davis. I may have seen her on ABC, but don't really know. And then John Fort, who's never heard his name. This media list is, Michael Strahan is a pretty major player. He's on one of these morning shows. He's on Fox Sports' NFL broadcast. He's not here. What's the guy, Lester Holt? Lester Holt has no influence? I thought he was the evening news anchor at CBS, and I know that's not as powerful as it used to be, but who's Vladimir Duthiers, and is he more powerful than Lester Holt? I don't know. Mm-hmm. Anyway, your thoughts on what does this media list say?
One of the things I think it says, particularly with Keith Lee being at the top, is this is actually, in an ironic sense, the root is mirroring the conversation that conservatives are having about the decline in influence of traditional media. Keith Lee is not just an MMA, former MMA fighter. He is probably the most popular sort of food critic sort of within Black cultural space, because whenever Keith Lee shows up in your town and he'll say, hey, I'm going to Atlanta, I'm going to New Orleans, I'm going to DC, I'm going to Baltimore, Keith Lee's the type of guy who will go to a restaurant and that restaurant could go from struggling to having a line of 1,000 people outside of the door by the time he leaves. He'll leave a $4,000 tip with him and his family. So what he does, he goes to cities, he goes to like mom and pop restaurants, right? So he's not going to any chain restaurants. He's not going to review Chipotle in San Diego. So he'll go to mom and pop restaurants. Sometimes they'll reach out to him and say, hey, we've been struggling. And he brings a lot of eyeballs. He brings customers out. He reviews the food typically in his car, right? He'll eat it and he'll give reviews on site. He never asks for special treatment, so he's not one of these New York Times food critics. And I've seen things where he'll show up and he'll do like drop $1,000 on a food truck, and also pay for people in the community to get some food while they're getting haircuts and playing music. So Keith Lee actually is influential, and I'm actually glad that the Root put him as high up as they did, because again, to me, it signals their acknowledgement that influence in the media doesn't just mean who works at CBS, NBC, or who is the executive director at the NABJ. It means people who just use, technology to broadcast their views, and restaurateurs will fall, Black restaurateurs will fall all over themselves to get Keith Lee to come out and review their spot. And I've actually, when he went to Baltimore, because he said the DC food scene was trash, when he went to Baltimore, he reviewed a place. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but they sell like chicken, but it might be like French inspired, but it's Black owned. And the first thing I did when I saw that, I texted my wife and said, hey, we got a new place to go check out in Baltimore. So kudos to the Root for putting him on there.
This is amazing and must speak to the progress I've made with my dining decisions, that I don't know the #1 restaurant influencer for, soul food shacks, because I certainly like soul food shacks, and that I don't even know this guy that speaks. I've made amazing progress. And so it sounds like he's kind of the Dave Portnoy, like Dave Portnoy for pizza. He's the Dave Portnoy for soul food, but perhaps even more powerful than Dave Portnoy's pizza reviews.
Yes, I mean, he is the type of person who can, again, take a business that's about to go out of business and revive life into them. And he goes to different cities, and he reviews food. And again, it's not just high-end chains. He'll go to hood restaurants, food trucks, more established, swankier type places. But he always does the same review. And again, I think it's important to note, he's a very humble person. He doesn't ask for special treatment. He was actually at, I think, either the Grammys or he was at some award show recently this past year. So he's a person who's known, and certainly known on what people sort of still refer to as Black Twitter, So I'm not surprised by that one, and I'm actually glad that they put him above some of the more traditional media voices.
What's his shtick or what's his tone? Because I'm unfamiliar, I was like, black food critic, male. Is he the Don Lemon of food critic, or is he?
No.
Oh.
No, he's a former MMA fighter, and apparently he's pretty good.
Yeah.
He's very muted, reserved. He speaks slowly. He's married and he has kids, and his family typically goes with him. So he's not zesty. He's not smacking his lips. He's a very methodical. You know, he'll taste his thing and say, okay, I taste this. Too much seasoning, not enough seasoning. It's good. You know, good texture, good flavor. So he's the opposite of a lot of the people on there, and sort of embodies sort of the strong, silent type archetype of masculinity that I think people are used to. But he also seems to be very much introverted and shy. And I'm not the type to put people on the spectrum, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has, you know, like anxiety around large crowds of people. That's the way he comes off. But definitely not, you know, he's not a foot soldier in the alphabet mafia for sure.
Wow, I'm gonna try to get this guy to Nashville to try Jason Whitlock's home fried chicken.
It's kind of like the diners, drive-ins, and dives.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. Thank you for the education, Delano.
No problem.
Delano is going to circle back for a different conversation. Today's economic environment is still really stressful for a lot of us. But with the Fed finally dropping interest rates, there's no better time than right now to put you and your family in a better financial position. If you're a homeowner, American Financing is helping thousands of families just like you who have been putting everyday expenses on credit cards. They're helping you get out from underneath that debt by tapping into your home's equity. American Financing is saving their borrowers more than $800 a month on average. $800 a month is like a $10,000 raise at work, and it costs you absolutely nothing to find out how much you can save. American Financing is closing some in as little as 10 days. And if you start today, you may not have to make next month's mortgage payment. There is no better time than right now to turn your situation around. Call today, 888-976-5555. That's 888-976-5555. American Financing is offering you the opportunity to ride this Trump wave of enthusiasm, excitement, and a revitalization of our economy. Don't miss out. AmericanFinancing.net/Whitlock. AmericanFinancing.net/Whitlock.
NMLS 182334, NMLSConsumerAccess.org.
But we're going to go to Steve Kim next. To me, it's like LeBron is intentionally trying to, he's so narcissistic. He's just trying to pleasure himself. Hey, my son's on the team with me. We're making history. He's got to be irate. Or look at Scottie Pippen's son just had a triple-double in the NBA. And, no, they're not playing together, but that's what you want from your son. It doesn't matter whether Scottie Pippen's on the team or not. Scottie Pippen's son is playing at a level similar to his dad, and obviously it's unlikely he'll be a Hall of Famer like his dad, but he's a legitimate NBA player. It just baffles my mind that you would turn your son into the Make-A-Swish kid.
The best dads, all of us know, want their children to be better than them. And then they just get out of the way and they say, go do your thing, stay on your own 2 feet, I'm here for support. And LeBron's doing the opposite. He's destroying if LeBron actually cared about Bronny at all, he'd be in his 2nd year of college right now, trying to develop into hopefully an NBA player one day, some way, somehow. Because I don't think he's got the talent, but we won't know ever now because he's destroyed his career before it could ever get off the ground. Because LeBron, when he looks back, he said, yeah, I wasn't Jordan, but I got me and my son played in the same team. Did you see that? We got pictures together.
He's turned his son into a laughingstock in a city that is really cruel to celebrity kids.
Mama Whitlock, would you line up? Mama Whitlock, would you line up? Pick more, pick less. Run your game, you gotta be fearless. Lock it in. Mama Whitlock, would you line up? Prize picks.
All right, welcome back. Let's get to our prize picks and a look at the football weekend with Steve Kim. Steve, we're going to start with a game that's very, very important to me. Utah travels to Colorado, and man, oh man, do I feel very good. Hey, Jack or Tiffany, do me a favor. I got a guest at the gate. Could we let the guest at the gate in? So, Steve, I'm sorry I had to do that. I had to take care of that. But, Steve, Utah travels to Colorado. I believe the Buffaloes are favored by 11.5. There's no way they cover the 11.5 spread. I'm actually going to be on Utah on the money line. I'm guaranteeing this victory, this upset victory for Utah. I'm all in on this. I need 2 losses in their last 3 games, and it starts this weekend. The Utah defense plays lights out and wins this game like 24-20. Your thoughts?
Before you start your weekend, Whitlock, I'm going to suggest to you something to do right now. Go on Amazon and look and type in Colorado Buffalo hoodie, sweats, shirts, beanies, socks, sweatbands, wristbands. You're going to need them for that promise. Yeah, right there. That's going to become our reality. Look at Utah. That's a deflated team. One of the bigger disappointments in the country. They had a veteran quarterback that could not stay healthy. Now they're coming off this emotional loss, a heartbreaking, gut-wrenching loss to their arch rival. Now they have to go on the road, and Colorado is a team with a lot to play for. Jason, I think the Buffaloes are going to roam. I like the Buffs. I'm just telling you, I actually believe in this Coach Prime squad. I may not like everything about them, but my slanted eye see a pretty good football team. I like the Buffaloes.
I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. The refs and the Big 12 have been put on notice about, how they screwed Utah last week. There'll be some funny officiating that helps me along the way and helps Utah pull off this upset. So I'm telling you, I'm on Utah. The 11.5 is just a gift. Just a gift. But for those of you that want to really cash in, it's the money line. Let's move to our prize pick as it relates to this game. My mother, being very intelligent here, Travis Hunter, less than 97.5 receiving yards. My mother nails it. The Utah defense is going to be incredible. Your thoughts?
I like this play. Travis Hunter, incredible player. Played up like 170 non-penalized snaps, or if you include the penalties, that's amazing. But Utah can still play some defense, though. They are still very good on that side of the ball. Travis Hunter will make an impact, but yes, I believe he'll be under that number. I'm with your mom there.
Great prize pick. All right, let's move on to game number 2 this weekend in college football. Tennessee at Georgia. Tennessee at Georgia. I gotta be honest, I don't have a strong feeling either way. I think 10 points is a kind of fat. And so if I had to, put anything down, it would be on Tennessee to cover. But I think Georgia wins this game. That's not my strongest endorsement, but that's where I would put my money at this point. Your thoughts?
I tend to agree with you. Keep this in mind. Tennessee's quarterback, who's very talented but has been very inconsistent, Nico Iamaleava, looks like he's in concussion protocol, and the word is he's probably not going to play. Now, Georgia has their backs against the wall. Can they afford a third loss and be in the playoff tournament? I don't think so, even being in the SEC. But that Georgia offense has been anemic. I think it goes further than just their quarterback who keeps throwing the ball to the wrong team. But I thought Tennessee's greatest ability to win this game was to hit a couple of D shots and play really good defense. I don't know if they have that capability with their backup. So I like the dogs between the hedges here, and I think they cover late.
My mother, as it relates to a prize picks, I disagree here. Carson Beck's been struggling. My mother has Carson Beck passing for more than 257 and a half yards.
Yeah.
That's her lineup. I'm not big on this Carson Beck pick. I think less than 257 yards.
Yeah, I vehemently disagree with your mother here. Carson Beck, it's interesting. He's been one of the bigger disappointments from an individual standpoint. There were mock drafts, Jason, that had him in the top 5, which I was like, wow, that's a little bold. Here's what's not being talked about when you look at Georgia's struggles. The loss of Brock Bowers, who I thought is one of the greatest college tight ends I've ever seen, and certainly in the last 20 years. And if you watch some of the games last year, he would just turn into Superman and take over the games. And they also lost a very good slot receiver in Ladd McConkey, who's making some plays for the Chargers. And they haven't really replicated those guys. Again, you talk about thinned out depth in college football. Georgia's going through that now after this dominant 3-year run. So I will take the under on that one against that stout Volunteer defense.
Let's move to the National Football League. Baltimore Ravens go on the road to Pittsburgh, a place where they haven't had a lot of success, a place where Lamar and that offense have tended to struggle. But somehow Baltimore, favored by 3, I definitely get them being the favorite. I think 3's fat. And I also think there's a chance, again, Baltimore's defense is questionable. I think this may be Butter's big moment with Russell Wilson, where he actually puts up big numbers and leads Pittsburgh to a victory. I like the Steelers here on the money line. I think Russell Wilson has a good game, a great game perhaps, against a shaky Ravens defense. I'm riding the Steelers here.
I think Russell's going to play well. I'm going with the Ravens in this game. I think
You're going with the Ravens.
I think Russell's going to have a great rest of the season. I think this is the Steelers' game to grab. They haven't played well against the Ravens historically. I think this is a game that changes it for them, but I'm still a Russell Wilson believer.
I'm going to go with the Ravens.
The Steelers. The Ravens. My apologies. The Ravens.
I like Baltimore.
Several different things. Anyway, I might have to say
he can't be wrong now. Yeah, he's on both sides. No matter what, he's going to come up with the winner.
I'm going with the Ravens.
It's like one of those gambler tout sheets. I remember the shows. One guy would say to one part of the country, "I like the Steelers," then the next, "I like the Ravens." So, all right. So, I believe Baltimore, even with a very bad secondary, is the best team in the National Football League, or at least the best team in the AFC alongside Detroit. Okay, now, I get it. It's a divisional road game. These are heated rivals. But I am a believer more than ever in Lamar Jackson's ability to take over games. It is still a much better offense, much more explosive than the Steelers. It'll be a battle. It'll be a black and blue type of game. Give me the Ravens as long as they do not ignore the Bama Slammer. Derrick Henry needs at least 20 carries this game.
All right, let's move to my mother's prize pick. I kind of like it. I think she's with me. She's got George Pickens more than 69.5 receiving yards. That's kind of an indication. She thinks Russell Wilson's going to play well. The offense for the Steelers is going to play well. I like this pick by my mother as my prize pick. George Pickens, more than 69.5 receiving yards.
Agreed. You could tell Pickens just was not on board with Justin Fields. His effort didn't always seem, let's put it this way, he wasn't exactly Charlie Hustle. With Russell Wilson, he seems much more engaged, much more involved. And again, we talk about that Ravens secondary. Chris McAllister and Ed Reed aren't exactly walking through that door. So I will go there, the over with George Pickens.
Let's move to maybe the biggest game or the other rival for the biggest game of the weekend. The undefeated Kansas City Chiefs, 9-0, travel to Buffalo to take on Josh Allen and the Bills. The Bills are -2 here. I think the Chiefs escaped death last week. I don't think they escape it this week. The Chiefs fall to 9-1. This is my team. They're just due. They need this loss, I think, to kind of reset. And Buffalo's going to cover here. I think Buffalo wins by 5 to 7 points. I like the Bills at home, removing the Chiefs from the unbeaten status.
If you look at recent history, one thing Buffalo has actually been able to do is to defeat Kansas City in the regular season. It's the playoffs where they've had an issue, and even those games have been close. I like the way Buffalo has developed. They made some key moves to help themselves on the outside. Josh Allen is in the MVP race, and like you said, and I know it's a backhanded compliment, but the Chiefs to me are like a flimsy 9-0, and I get it. People are going to kill me for it. Your record is what your record says it is, but there comes a point in time where you're not going to get all the big breaks, or you're not going to be able to get that one big stop or that one big block field goal. Give me Buffalo here at Rich Stadium.
My mother, I don't know what this means. Maybe she just means Josh Allen is a little bit reckless. But her prize pick here is Josh Allen, at least one interception, more than a half an interception. She's got Josh Allen turning the ball over here. That's probably a fair assumption. Big game. Doesn't mean he's going to have a bad game, but it means he's going to be super aggressive, maybe get picked off once. It's not a bad bet, but it's not the bet. It's not the play I would make. So I disagree with my mother here. I think Josh Allen plays a clean game, less than a half, no interceptions. You know what? With this Kansas City defense, it could be a fluke play. It could be a deflection, and you know they've been pretty good. You know what? I'm gonna go with your mother here. Look, Josh you're right. He can throw for 330, throw for 3 touchdowns, have an interception. So I will agree with her. That's an interesting prop bet there. Let's move to the final game, Sunday Night Football. Huge game. Bengals, if they want to keep their falling playoff hopes alive, they got to go to play the LA Chargers, knock off a team that's 6-3. The Chargers, I don't think they've let any team score more than 21 points this season. Their defense has been incredible. Jim Harbaugh hasn't had the offensive impact that I think everybody was expecting, but the Chargers are playing good. They seem to be ascending. Their defense is terrific. They're only giving up 1.5 points. I think the Chargers cover here. I think the Bengals score 13 points. Chargers score about 20, cover easily, win this game kind of ugly like they have been. I like the Chargers here and the cover. Your thoughts? I'm with you. I think this has to be a relatively low-scoring game. If it turns into a track meet, it is more or less the type of game the Bengals want. You know, the one thing that I really like about the Chargers, as opposed to the last several years, they're playing much better situational football. In other words, they're not going for it on their own 18-yard line in the third quarter. When you look at a team, like just the Charger football the last 3 years, they put up great stats. And you know what they would do? They'd always lose one-possession games because situationally, I don't think they were very, very good. And at least with Harbaugh, they're much more sound. I still think they need to be better on the outside.
But I'm with you. I get the sense the Chargers are going to be a solid, tough, physical team. It's going to be hardball football throughout the rest of the year. I will take the Bolts in this situation.
Finally, my mother is wrong here, in my opinion. She has Jamar Chase, the Cincinnati receiver, more than 7 receptions. I don't think so. I think he struggles. Probably gets targeted a bunch of times, but I just don't think he's going to get to 7 receptions. I say less than 7 receptions for Jamar Chase.
Well, look, without T. Higgins, he's basically the first and second option. And Joe Burrow, even though this team is scuffling, he's playing some high-level football. And this is what the Bengals do. They throw the ball, right? Now, that's 7 receptions. Since there's no yards put upon it, you could manufacture a lot of short game stuff. You know what? I'm going to take the over. I'm with your mom on this one. I think without T. Higgins, it actually creates more emphasis on getting the ball to number 1.
Steve, thank you. Enjoy your weekend. Miami can't cheat anymore. Are they out of the playoff race with their 1 loss?
No, it's just a small hiccup. It's a speed bump. We're regrouping in the bye week. Don't worry about it. We're picking up some guys on waivers.
Oh, you're in the bye week.
Yeah, we're in the bye week.
You can't cheat the bye week, so you won't get a victory this weekend.
Oh,
all right. Thank you, Steve. Enjoy your weekend. As the world teeters on the brink of annihilation, Dietrich Bonhoeffer is swept into the epicenter of a deadly plot to assassinate Adolf Hitler in Angel Studios' upcoming film, Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Spy, Assassin. It's hitting theaters November 22nd. Get showtimes right now at angel.com/Jason. With his faith and fate at stake, Bonhoeffer must choose between upholding his moral convictions or risking it all to save millions of Jews from genocide. Will his shift from preaching peace to plotting murder alter the course of history or cost him everything? Please check out this movie. Angel Studios does a great job giving those of us that are believers awesome movie content that doesn't violate our values. Check out this movie, Bonhoeffer. Get your tickets today at angel.com/Jason. We're going to circle back to Professor D, Delano Squires. Next. Welcome to Extra Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Oh my God, Lyndon Johnson, his thoughts are so disgusting. I can't believe you would engage with him. The celebration for being a slut have never been greater. Why do you choose Taylor Swift, and why do you pick up a role as, let me help my woman undress on stage in front of an audience?
When I look at people like Sexy Red or Cardi B that we prop up, now I see that the white community as well is just as fried.
It does look to me like he made some eye contact with her and then just decided, nah, let me move on. The BET Awards seems like a psyop at this point. It's just Democratic brainwashing. Get in there and fight for all the things. Steve, that's it for you. I'm done. All right, welcome back. Man, I've been waiting to have this conversation with Delano Squires about the column I wrote earlier this week, my evaluation of the election and why people voted, particularly women voted in the way that they did. Major story about white women and why they went towards Trump in ways that people didn't expect, particularly white suburban women. My theory is, and I argue in the piece, is that white women are fed up and are no longer going to play the game, that their sons are inherently racist, and that their sons are in need of being reprogrammed, that their sons are somehow inferior and rigged in a very wicked and negative way. That's a big part of the Democrat message. I argued in the piece that from Joe Biden to Kamala Harris to Hillary Clinton, their message as it relates to Trump is, I'm not Donald Trump and Donald Trump is racist. And that's their sales pitch, and it fell on deaf ears. For black women that remain really, really loyal, there is some slight movement, but I believe 92% of black women stayed loyal to the Democrat Party. And so there's been all this excuse making and explanations going on television from Democratic strategists, from Rachel Maddow to Joy Reid to James Carville, all these different people making this argument, making all these excuses about what happened, and none of them want to address the fact that I think white women just said deuces on slandering my sons. No one wants to be a second-class citizen based on race. And I think their argument that, you know, abortion is good. Whiteness is inherently evil and abortion is inherently good. I just think people said deuces on that. Anyway, I wanted to have the discussion with Delano. TJ Moe, Butter are here with me as well. Delano, welcome back to the show. What's your theory on why white women went more towards Trump and black women remain really, really loyal to the Democrat Party?
Well, Jason, I'll start here because I think this narrative really got started in 2016, where you remember after Trump won, everybody was writing op-eds, 53% of white women voted for Donald Trump, right? And I remember at the time, I just did some research and I realized about 50 to 53% of white women had voted for the Republican candidate in like the last 2, 3, 4 elections. So I don't know if it's as much of a shift as there are conservative white women in this country that, the liberal media doesn't want to talk about. I think a big part of it is the marriage rates, and this is sort of where I would go in my analysis, because about 53% of white adults are married, compared to about 33% of black adults. And married women tend to vote more conservatively than unmarried women. So unmarried women basically break 60% for Democrats, married women a little over half for Republicans. So when you combine those two things, right, you're talking about white women who are married, who have a husband, whose job is to lead and to guide their family. I think that's a big part of what is going on here, and I think that's the reason that the Democrats were running ads in the last couple of weeks prior to the election, telling women, and they used 2 white women in the ad, hey, the voting booth is one place where you still have choice. Your husband may want you to vote Trump, but you can pull the lever for Kamala, and he'll never know the better. And I think there's something to that. Now on the flip side, where you see black women again, many of whom are unmarried, I'm not saying all, but the dynamics in the black community are completely different. The gender dynamics are completely different. Every other community, in every ethnic group, men vote more conservatively than women. That's just part of the deal. For whites, definitely, where more than half of the men vote for Republicans. For Hispanics, it was 58% of Hispanic men voted, I think, for Trump, or 55%. About 38% of women. So the men are leading the women in a more conservative direction. In the black community, you have something totally different, which is the men that still voted more for Trump than the women, but 92% of black women are moving to the left. And the black men are following their women. And this is the household dynamic that Democrats love, because as I've said this before, the most significant interracial union in this country has nothing to do with Loving versus Virginia. It is the marriage between black feminists and white liberals that's been powering the Democratic Party for over 60 years. And black women were not about to give up on their man, even if their man in this particular election was a woman. So that dynamic between the black community, particularly black women, the backbone of the Democrats, as they always say, is not one that is going to break anytime soon, because no woman is going to run out with her man when she feels that he's down and out. And I don't think these women are any different.
So, so your argument would be, hey, there's really been no shift with white women. They just did what married white women have been doing, and there is no shift with white women. And so the disappointment with white women that is being expressed by the Joy Reids and others is, you could just play that on repeat for every election even before this.
Correct. Now, I think there are shifts in terms of age, right? Trump did better among 18 to 24-year-olds. But in terms of you're just looking at white women, there really was no significant shift. The problem is that the media creates an illusion in our mind that there's a shift because they start from the position, one, that voting Democrat is the moral thing to do, right? And they make moral appeals to white women. Two, they start from the position that every voter, particularly white women, apparently, are like these free-floating molecules who can be attracted to one side or the next in every given election. But again, party ID is a real thing. And people who identify as Republican or who vote Republican or register as Democrat tend to vote for their party. So if you have white women, again, let's say it's about half the country, who are registered Republicans or conservative, that's the direction they're going to go. So it's not to say Trump got 65% of white women, which would, to me, represent a significant shift. He got about the same percentage, but the media assumes that all white women should be down for sort of a radical feminist agenda. So they say, well, why aren't more of these women coming over to our side in the way that black women do? And that's where I would say, again, you have some really interesting dynamics in terms of party ID. There's some other things for black women as well. A lot of black folks not just live in the South, but live in and around cities where there are no Republican candidates to vote for. So the muscle memory is built up to vote Democrat. You have to acknowledge that. If you live in New York or Philadelphia or Atlanta or Detroit, there's no real viable GOP alternative. You have the impact of race and the way race is weaponized against black voters. If you vote for Trump, he's going to put you back in chains. He's going to put you back in slavery, fascism, racism, Nazi. You have that as well. And then you have this legacy of civil rights, right? Again, 60 years, a 60-year shadow over the black community that says, look, these are the people that granted us civil rights. We can't turn our back on them right now. And I think all those things sort of combine to explain why black voters, even black men, for real, Jason, right? The brothers disappointed me a little bit. I was hoping to get 25%. Black men were about where they were with Trump last election. Now, again, move more than black women, but the numbers for the black community between 2020 and 2024 did not really shift that much. It's Hispanic men who really made the jump. And the media doesn't really want to talk about that, I think, as much, because it's hard to say that all these Hispanic guys are closeted white supremacists, but that's really where you see the biggest jump.
Well, and maybe I'm just overly optimistic or looking for rays of hope. And so maybe I'm caught up in a false narrative that black men did make a shift. Again, not as significant as, and I'm just like you. I was sitting there hoping for 25, 27%, so we can really come and beat our chest. and I think it landed around 20%.
20.
And it's like a two.
Regional, though.
Huh?
It's regional. In Texas, it was 34%.
Yep.
And in Pennsylvania, it was 25%. So it is. That's where your glimmer of hope is, that it's coming. In these places that are deeply affected by these issues, like the border crisis in Texas, black men are like, I'm out on this. You're taking our job. We're not having it.
Yeah.
And so the other part of my column that because Trump had historic improvement in a lot of counties and with a lot of different demographics where he improved. And so his message is clearly resonating, and people, I think, are starting to lean into their convictions more than leaning into their fear. And I think there's two things that have had a ramification on that. The pandemic, COVID, people realize, oh my God, they scared us into acting like idiots. And I got to resist letting fear drive my behavior. And then I think Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter has freed up free speech, where people can actually say what they think without these terrible repercussions of being run out of jobs, run out of leadership positions. What do you think of that Elon Musk and the COVID pandemic has given people a lot less fear and a lot more confidence to lean into their convictions?
I definitely agree with that. And I think a lot of Americans are becoming tired of sort of the weaponized, emotional manipulation from you're a racist, you're sexist, you're homophobic, you're transphobic, you're bigoted. And I think sort of the nature of the social media platforms, particularly, X or Twitter, as I still call it, but particularly for that one, people can see these things going back and forth in real time, and you can actually see, okay, this is how I was treated for saying something. Like there's a political commentator, Michael Singleton, who's always on CNN, right? Black dude, right of center. I think he calls himself a Republican, but certainly right of center. He was talking about boys and girls sports. There was a white liberal. I'm not sure if he's a rabbi. I know he's Jewish, but he might be a rabbi as well, LGBTQ identifying, who jumped on him and said, no, you can't say that. I'm not going to sit here and listen to transphobic language. And Michael held his ground and went on to explain that this issue is not popular among Americans. Now, the host of that show, Abby Phillip, basically, you could see which side she was leaning on. She said, okay, we know you're not transphobic, right? Where she's sort of seeding the premise that saying that a boy is a boy regardless of whether he wants to identify as a girl. She seeded the premise that it's transphobic. And then she said, well, let's see if you can explain your point with being respectful. I think people see that and say, look, I'm not putting up with this crap anymore, right? And we've had 4 years of that. And I do think, seeing how crazy the world went during COVID had an effect. And I'll credit Trump for this. 2 years ago, he wouldn't have been able to make the pivot from his COVID performance to where he is now, because he had that 1,000-pound jab hanging around his neck. And I think surrounding himself with people like RFK who could slowly walk him back and be able, so he could say, we handled COVID as well as we could without saying, I'm the one who created Operation Warp Speed and I got the jab, was a masterful pivot on his part, because he was vulnerable. His ego was vulnerable to taking that loss. So I'll credit him for that. But yes, the free speech and the platforms that allow for it, I do think are having an effect on the American people.
And look, I may have memory lapse and may, just haven't paid close enough attention. But one of the other things I felt and conclusions I've reached and read, it's like, hey man, the Democrats have just run out of ideas. I don't even know what Kamala ran on. Honest to goodness. It's like, and the last thing I can remember about what the Democrats ran on was the Affordable Care Act with Barack Obama. And I know Trump has not Trump, but Biden has Build Back Better, but I don't even understand that. That's infrastructure. It's just some catchphrase. I don't know what Hillary Clinton ran on. Kamala seems to have run on abortion, but that's, I don't know how but what are their ideas? It's like they've run out of ideas, and it's like, they're racist, they're homophobic, they're misogynistic. Vote for us. We're not. That's not an idea. That's a reputation insurance scam. Right, wrong, or?
No, this is the difference between the two parties, right? Because I see this often on my neck of the woods on social media. I'll see people on the center left, let's say Christians, who say, I don't know how Trump voting Christians could justify his character and his attitude. And again, if you want to criticize Trump and some of the things he says, how he says, I'm fine with it. I don't have no problem with that. Then you have Christians on the right who say, look, I don't understand how people who say that they're Christian on the left vote for this party and therefore abortion, trans, and all this other stuff. And really, here's the issue. On the right, what you have is you have a party that has people with different, to your point, different ideas, right? Similar worldviews, but expressed in different ways. You have social conservatives, you have fiscal conservatives, you have national conservatives, you have still some neocons, right? So when you show up and you say this is a Republican Party, you have different people grappling with different issues, different perspectives. You may have some like serious, you'll have somebody like DeSantis go to war with Disney and say, look, we don't care how much money you pour into Florida, you're not going to trans our kids. And you have somebody like Nikki Haley and Mike Pence on the other side, and to a lesser extent Trump saying, well, look, you can't go to war with Disney, GDP, too much money. So you have actual tension within the party. On the left, what you have are all the same ideas, but different avatars through which those ideas are expressed. So you're not picking among people who have really different views. You can't find a pro-life Democrat in Congress. You can't find a Democrat who's willing to say publicly there are two sexes and switching is not allowed. Now, not publicly. So whether you ran Kamala Harris, whether you ran Gavin Newsom, whether you ran Josh Shapiro, all of them are going to come out on the same place on these major issues today. Some stuff around the fringes, regional issues, a Democrat from Texas may have a different view on immigration, but in terms of some of the big stuff, the identity stuff, all going to be the same place. And in fact, someone like Kamala Harris may be better on some of these identity issues from the conservative perspective, because Joe Biden, he was old. You knew there were people putting stuff in his, in his teleprompter. But Gavin Newsom, to me, would be way more radical on LGBT and abortion stuff than Kamala Harris. The reason is because Gavin Newsom, in his very identity, represents the apex predator, apex oppressor when it comes to sort of the intersectional sort of Hunger Games. He's a straight, white, let's assume he identifies as Christian male, apex oppressor. That means he has to do even more to show that I'm really down for the cause and I'm an ally. Somebody who's a little bit lower down the scale, a black identifying woman, has a little bit more built-in sort of leeway to say, I can still be radical. I don't have to be as radical because there's not as much pressure on me to be that radical. So Democrats, you're not choosing between people with different ideas. It's not Union Democrats versus Blue Dog Democrats in the South. It's all radical. We are a sex cult, abortion loving, build back butcher, child mutilation party. And if you want to be down with this side, this is what you have to sign on to. And anybody that wants to run for public office on a national level has to be down with that agenda.
Yeah, I don't actually think they're running out of ideas. I think all of their ideas are being implemented and America hates it. And so they can't tell them what their new ideas are because America hates. Look where the culture has moved with all the trans stuff and all the, they have gay marriage. Minimum wage in Missouri, we just passed, it's $15. That would have been unthinkable in Missouri years ago. It's $15 an hour, just passed on referendum. With Obamacare, they can't run on universal health care. You can go to single payer, but everybody has Canada to look at. You have the Green New Deal, and everybody's like, look, I can't afford a sandwich right now. You think I'm going to throw $1 trillion into a Green New Deal? So they have all these ideas that they can't run on, and they've been in power for 12 out of the last 16 years. So all of their ideas are actually being implemented. America hates it, and so now all they can say is, don't let men control women's bodies, and we're not Donald Trump. That's what they're stuck at.
Holy cow, that's a phenomenal point. Holy cow. We're doing all the things that they want done, and they're ashamed to admit it because it, we are grooming your kids, and we got drag queens coming all week next week, and blah blah. And it's like, holy cow,
Their ideas, they're just rolling them out. They've been in power this whole time. They just roll out a new idea. America hates it, reject it. They back away a little bit while saying, that's not really happening. Like, what is it? No, that's not happening. Okay, but it's on the fringes. Yes, it's happening, but it's actually a good thing, and here's why.
Right.
That is the process of which they go through.
Right.
And so they were left, they literally, because of the overturn of Roe v. Wade, the one idea that there's been pushback on and isn't flowing their direction, that's why they had to run on it. They had to, hey, this is the thing that you guys, the Supreme Court rejected, and we'd like to put back into place. It was the only idea they had to run on, and man, that blows my mind.
Jason,
go ahead.
Let me
Delano.
say this. to me, one of, if not the most effective campaign ad from this election was the one where there was a Trump ad where he had Charlemagne. He took it straight from the Breakfast Club show. And Charlemagne and DJ Envy were saying, look, man, I was watching this thing, and they said Kamala wanted to pay for trans surgery for these inmates and immigrants. And I said, well, Americans don't like that. And to TJ's point, right, she did say it. It was her words. No, they didn't put the words in her mouth, but she had to back off of it because, again, and this the point TJ was making, people realize how radical that sounds. And at the end of that ad, it said, Kamala Harris is for they, them. Trump is for you. And I said, whoo, boy, that is a smoker right there. And if you notice, right after that ad aired from Trump, one, Charlemagne issued a cease and desist order, but two, that's when he went on CNN with Anderson Cooper and started saying, why don't y'all call him a fascist? Why don't you call him the threat to democracy that... Because he probably got the call and said, look, man, you are in the most effective anti-Harris Walz ad in the country right now. You have to go back out on the stump and pay penance, right, to show that you're a loyal soldier. So that's why. And then the election happens, and now he's back saying, well, why aren't they calling him fascist anymore? It's almost as if they didn't really believe it. And I'm saying, you are the person that you're criticizing, right? It's not they, it's me. Why am I not saying that anymore? So yeah, they run on the same stuff. They can get some of it by locally, but when you really put these things to light, and this is why Democrats always have to use obfuscation. This is why they want to control the terms. They want control of the dictionary, because when you actually tell people, okay, an abortion literally at 13 weeks, rips a child's body apart limb from limb, and the last thing that they have to do is crush the skull before extracting it from the mother. That sounds a lot different than saying, oh, I'm for reproductive health care and reproductive justice. So whenever somebody starts playing fast and loose with terms and using euphemisms, you know you're about to be sold a bill of goods.
I heard Joy Reid say that Kamala did better with secular voters than Joe Biden. It was one of the few areas where she actually improved. Mm-hmm. The secular crowd actually liked Kamala Harris even more. Yep. And in everything else, she went in reverse. But with the atheist crowd, she improved. And so I just, for those on the left who contend that the Democrat Party actually represents Christian values more than the Republican Party, how do they get around the fact that, no, the party actually appeals to atheists and the secular crowd more than it does any other demographic? How do they get around that?
I think part of the way they get around it for this particular election, and we won't know until 2028 how much of this movement is due to Trump or due to a legitimate sort of political realignment, right? Like I know people who would voted Trump but probably wouldn't have voted for Ron DeSantis. And I know people who, the opposite, who says, look, I just can't get with Trump. I don't like the way he talks. I don't like the way he talks about people. I don't like his character. I think what you would hear people say, let me not just say people. Jason, I'm sure you saw the ad that was put out by Evangelicals for Harris with the black preachers, with Yolanda Adams and Jamal Bryant and William Murphy and the Clark sisters. And I think Bishop Sheard, right, who's sort of the presiding bishop over the Kojic denomination. And it was all about competence and character. And we want to put our sister in the White House. So I think like that subset, which is a large subset of black Christians, would say, Trump says mean things. He's mean to people. He doesn't have the type of character that we think aligns with Christian values. And because of that, we will vote for him, even if we don't agree with abortion and trans and all that other stuff. And I think that's how they justify it. But let me say this, because conservatives in the Republican Party, we are going to have to do our own house cleaning, because a party that is large enough to accommodate both Bruce, AKA Caitlyn Jenner, and Franklin Graham and 80% of white evangelicals is going to have to grapple with its own issues when it comes to some of these really important social issues, particularly on the trans stuff. And to me, it's not going to be enough just to say, oh, no boys and girls sports, no boys and girls locker rooms, if you leave all of the other sort of cultural infrastructure of transgender ideology in its place. And I'm not sure the conservative side, the Republican Party, has a stomach for that right now.
Right now, but 4 years from now, if we do enough cleanup, if we do enough institutional cleanup, like, the analogy would be like Elon getting rid of 80% of Twitter employees. If we get rid of a high enough percentage of government employees.
Department of Education. That's number one.
Yeah.
That's what stops this trans ideology in its tracks. If you actually eliminated the Department of Education, how can you trans the kids? It's all on a state level now. It would certainly minimally go regional.
Yeah. And so and plus, trust me, I feel confident enough, whether it's J.D. Vance, whether it's Tulsi Gabbard, whether it's Vivek Ramaswamy, whether it's RFK Jr., whoever it is next after Trump, trust me, they'll be Adolf Hitler too. They'll be Adolf Hitler too. Yeah. I mean, Donald Trump has dated black women, friends with all kinds of black celebrities, was celebrated in rap music, and they turned him into a racist. So it can be done. Anybody can be turned into Adolf Hitler. Me, you, anybody.
Mitt Romney was going to put y'all back in chains, remember?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mitt Romney, the most milquetoast white dude in Utah that's ever existed.
I want to go ahead, Butter.
I just wanted to ask one quick question because to me, I think there was so many factors that went into this election being determined the way it did for us winning on this kind of level. I don't think the margins were exceptionally wide, but we won on every level. I think on January 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, a man on a campaign stage laying in his own blood stood up.
Was that January?
July 13th, he stood up. I said January. On July 13th, when he stood up, I think that galvanized I don't know where RFK was at that point. I don't know where Joe Rogan was at that point. I don't know where all of these people. I think it galvanized people around who this guy was and what he has been doing. I think it changed how people came to the campaign. I know a lot of conservative women that were affected by that. I think something happened on the assassination attempt that when he stood back up and came back, it just proved what he was really doing. And I think that affected people and carried longer. I know we quit talking about it. I know it's not in the news cycle anymore. I think that one event changed not only voters, but the people that came to support him and his coalition.
I think you make an excellent point, and we shouldn't forget that what you're saying is like, no, Jason, that's the pivotal moment because people, men and women, are attracted to masculinity. It's we've talked about it on this show. I don't know if I've talked about it with Delano, but it's why rap music and its perverted, toxic form of masculinity has been popular. Is because if you take masculinity away and people are I just need masculinity from anywhere. I'll drink water out of the toilet because I haven't had water in weeks. And so Trump, as flawed as he is, he gave people a taste of masculinity. Women liked it. Men loved it, and it made them say, if he can take that kind of risk, I can take that kind of risk. Delano?
Yeah, I think when you look at the breakdown in terms of how women and men tend to vote, and you listen to the language and the rhetoric around this past election, what you see is really we were voting not just for either Trump or Harris, right? It's not just a bunch of policies, but it's also a worldview. And you have patriarchy on one side faced off, and it's not a fair fight against matriarchy and thetriarchy on the other side. And I think when people got a taste of what that looks like, right, not just being ruled by your mama, but being ruled by your mama's guy friend who says that he's a girl now, right? I mean, and Democrats say, oh, we haven't gone too far, we haven't gone too radical. What does coming back to the center look like? Well, it means not inviting cross-dressers and transgender people to the White House to show their bare breasts on Trans Day of Visibility. I mean, that's a start. So I do think that those gender dynamics are there at play. And again, because I know we talked about it last time I was here, Jason, I was hoping, again, black men, I knew 50% of black men were going to vote for Trump, right? We're not there yet. I was hoping the percentage would tick up a little bit. But after watching that BET Black Men Summit, which was, at least on my side of Twitter, was universally criticized, it told me, like, we need to get our own house in order, because the gender dynamics in the home are so broken that these guys are led around by the nose. They say, we stand with black women. No, you don't. You stand behind black women. And they will remind you, get in line, follow us. We're saving the country, we're saving democracy, we're saving the planet, we're saving the galaxy, we're saving eternity. And black men, you should consider yourselves thankful to be along for the ride. And there's only but so much of that people are going to take, because as I wrote a piece, said that black male feminists are never going to be respected. The types of women, the types of men that these guys think they have to be good allies to women are not the types of women that these women respect. They're just not. And they don't understand that. And that's why we need a no-man revolution. You remember Al Bundy, Jason, when the North American men against Amazonian masterhood, the T-shirts, when Al Bundy and all his guys from his bowling league said no, ma'am, and they tied up Jerry Springer, right? And they put a sign around his chest that said ovulates. That's the type of revolution that we need, right? For anybody old enough
I totally agree.
To watch
I wasn't a Married with Children fan. I wasn't, but the analogy works. You explained it well. Hold for 1 second. I just want to take care of one of our great sponsors and talk about an Angel Studios movie that's coming out that I want everyone to go see, Bonhoeffer. As the world teeters on the brink of annihilation, Dietrich Bonhoeffer is swept into the epicenter of a deadly plot to assassinate Adolf Hitler in Angel Studios' upcoming film, Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Spy, Assassin, hitting theaters November 22nd. Get showtimes right now at angel.com/Jason. With his faith and fate at stake, Bonhoeffer must choose between upholding his moral convictions or risking it all to save millions of Jews from genocide. Will his shift from preaching peace to plotting murder alter the course of history, cost him everything? Find out this Thanksgiving. Get your tickets today at angel.com/Jason. This is based on a true story. You guys have seen Eric Metaxas on this show talk about this. This should be another amazing movie from Angel Studios. Delano, I want to return to you to get your thoughts on this push to, there are people suggesting that Joe Biden should step down from the presidency and allow Kamala Harris be president for 30 days, 40 days, whatever, so that we have that important symbol. And the man's already stepped down from running. He's already emasculated himself enough. Now they want him to go the extra level so Kamala Harris can be this symbolic president for 30 days. I'm comparing it to, hey, like, give her a one-day contract like they do in the NFL and let her retire as president. Your thoughts on this suggestion?
Jason, if I could, I want to put a pin on that last point about Al Bundy, because if you want to see how quickly the culture can change, Ed O'Neill played Al Bundy in Married with Children, completely un-PC. As I said, they had a anti-feminist. 20-something, 30-something years later, he's playing the patriarch in Modern Family with a gay son who wanted to have a baby by his sister, right? So if you don't think that the feminists will exact their revenge on you, you're really not paying attention. So you go from Al Bundy to Modern Family. Now, on this issue, Jamal Simmons, I hope Jamal Simmons got a call from Kamala Harris directly saying, you need to shut the bleep up. Because what Jamal Simmons is doing is showing that the people, to me, the biggest villains in any DEI scheme are the people pushing it, because they get to show, look how virtuous I am. Look how much I care about women. Look how much I care about oppressed minorities. Look how much I care about black people. Not understanding that when you subject people to that type of, those types of lower standards, you never get the respect that you think that they're going to get for it. This is no different than what you've been saying with Bronny and the Make a Swish sort of push from the NBA, right? Yes, you have the good feelings that come along with playing with your dad, but what you will never have is the respect from your peers from having earned that position. And in the same way, if Joe Biden listened to this stupid idea and appointed Kamala Harris the president, right, for 20, 30 days, sure, but people say, oh, we got the Harris president. Sure, will there be some of that? Sure. She will never be respected. Never. And in fact, I would assume if Joe Biden floated that possibility, I would hope if she had any common sense that she would turn it down and say, sir, respectfully, the office of the presidency is way too important for it to be treated in such a callous and reckless manner as some type of prop and sort of, you know, performance art. That's what I hope she would say.
disagree with you, Delano. I disagree in terms, I don't think she values respect at all. I don't think that's her. She values power. She values symbolism. Years ago, and I'm not going to call a name, but it's like we have fallen in love with, I was the first black person to ever drink water while getting a C on a test at Harvard. And I did it while wearing green pants, and I was the first black person to do that. These distinctions, and I can remember I had an argument with somebody. I was like, you thinking you making history? No, it's a distinction that you've overvalued. And we have fallen in love with these, I'm the first this, I'm the first that, I'm the first blah, and it's insanity. And I think Kamala Harris is right in line with that, because I think Jamal Simmons, didn't he work for Kamala Harris? I don't think he floated this out here without the approval of Kamala Harris and the camp. I think she would take a symbolic appointment, wear it with pride, her being vice president. It's like Ketanji Brown Jackson, didn't they say, I'm gonna name a black woman to the Supreme Court? Yep. Ketanji Brown Jackson didn't mind the fact, he said, I'm not gonna nominate the best person for the Supreme Court, I'm gonna find a black woman who doesn't know what a woman is. And they
did for Kamala for the VP. The exact same thing happened. And look, if we had any respect for the office of the president, we wouldn't have a guy in there who looks like he's a stroke victim for the last 4 years and his brain hasn't been working. Okay, so we already don't have that. The second thing is, Joe Biden hates Kamala Harris. This, at this point, is common knowledge. Everybody knows that. Those two have not been on speaking terms. Today, there's a video going around, Charlie Kirk posted, that Jill Biden totally ignored Kamala Harris while she was going around shaking everybody's hands. Jill sat there all nice, prim and proper, and just looked the other way. These people do not, there is no way in the world that Joe Biden, who was forced to step down, and I still don't believe he wrote that letter because it's not his signature, he was forced to step down, would ever give that woman any piece of joy. You'd have to kill him, which they might do, to give her a one-day contract to be president of the United States.
So you tend to agree with me. I think Jamal Simmons acted on orders from the Kamala Harris camp to float this out there. It's just another pressure campaign.
100%. Look, her career in politics is over.
Yeah.
So all she wants now is to say, I was the first female president, and sit there and drink her wine. That's it.
Yeah, and she would, if she ever got it, the inauguration would probably feature her or whatever, they switch power, you know, with a bathtub full of collard greens. Kamala's collard greens. That's how
Ronnie James for VP.
Might as well.
She would be the make a switch. Because again, it's, and I know Bronny James is just 19 and he's got this iconic father, but it's just like, if I were Bronny James, I'd tap out. Say, hey, Dad, you're making a fool of me. These guys don't like me. I don't travel for road, but anyway. Delano, I'm gonna let you go.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No,
We're not rushed. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and it's not just Jamal Simmons, right? Who did that? I saw Bakari Sellers floated this idea. Oh, they should try to get Sonia, Justice Sotomayor to step down from the Supreme Court, and Joe Biden can appoint Kamala Harris. So now, to be fair, going back in terms of the pick, when Trump had to appoint a Supreme Court justice, the last person he appointed, he said he was going to appoint a woman, and he got Amy Coney Barrett. Now, in sort of legal circles, it was like, no, Amy Coney Barrett was going to be up for this type of consideration anyway, because she's a really good jurist. And this is why I go back to, I reserve, my frustration mainly lies with the people who do this, not the people who accept the positions, because if you're a circuit court judge, a Supreme Court nomination is like obviously a big thing. So most people are not going to turn it down. But when people do, when Joe Biden did it to Harris, when he got pressured into saying he's going to appoint a woman as his VP, and then it became a black woman, to me, it was more so about him being able to say, and he did often, well, I nominated the first black woman to the Supreme Court. And this is the way it always goes with these type of, either whether you call it DEI or affirmative action. Harvard doesn't care about the black students that benefit from this. Harvard just likes to be able to beat its chest and say, we are an institution committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they don't care what type of crap you get as a student, feeling as if, well, maybe I don't belong because I get in under this special dispensation. They don't care about that. They just know that they get to take credit for it and bragging rights for it. And I feel the same thing would happen here. So I hope this does not happen. And I hope if it's floated, that she would respectfully decline, because this is not you don't want to go out this way on sort of the Make-A-Swish tour.
Her entire political career is just based, and many politicians are based on favors and handouts. And anyway, go ahead.
Delano, I don't think Trump did that. I think Trump took advantage of a very stupid culture. I think Trump, there were a lot of rumors when Kavanaugh maybe was having to step, or not going to get confirmed or pulled away. He wasn't going to pull him. If he wasn't going to get confirmed, there was a ton of rumors that Trump already had Amy Coney Barrett up his sleeve, ready to put her, because he was going to, she was known at the time, didn't turn out that way during the trials, but she was known at the time, because she had such a strong Catholic and so many kids, as the most pro-life judge who was in line. So he just took advantage of the Amy Coney Barrett thing and said, I already know who I'm going to pick. By the way, it's going to be a woman, I promise you, because he already knew, and he got to bank his points for saying, I did the same thing. All you crazy people obsessed with women and everything, look what I just did. Well, he already knew he was going to pick. That's Trump being a showman.
Thank you, guys, and thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.
Freedom, looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came in like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation, we all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on the corner, never been alone, I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back, we are receiving, all deceiving, we all wanna be free.